So let us start today's session. So we'll briefly discuss about if you have your any questions or doubts at the end of the session, because today we'll like complete the most of the things, or rather majority of the things of what we have discussed for our data types and different objects, visual objects, right, form, class, things. So those things we have covered, and table, all these things we have also covered. So from next week actually we'll start working on the classes. Okay, so like where we actually go and write out business logic, and we can start doing practice all those things. Before that, I just wanted to cover these things, and two important things are pending, so I thought of covering those things because that is important. And for tomorrow, when we'll start the session, we'll discuss this and cover all the things, and we'll have a quick brush up sessions also. And at the end of the session, I'll want to have information that how many of you are currently having the Windows Pro or Enterprise license version. So if we have that, then we can go ahead and have our own virtual machines, and we can start work on that. Okay, so that will be helpful for us. So before that, we can start today with our session, which is majorly which we'll discuss is queries and views. Okay, so I thought of covering this in one day because these are more or less similar. I mean, these are interrelated things. Okay, what are queries and views? Okay, before that, I believe everyone is aware of the, or some of you, if you are not, so raise your hand or just let me know when I'm starting the class. So do you know the concept of joins? In SQL we have the concept of join, or whenever you are writing any programming language, we have this. Whenever you are adding to data structure, we have a concept of joins, where we can do an inner join, outer join, those left outer, right outer join. So everyone has the idea of this joins, or do I need to spend few minutes on that? So if everyone can speak on that, that would be helpful.
Hi Maitra, Ashok here.
Yes, Ashok.
Maybe I need your help to spend a couple of minutes explaining the concepts.
Okay, okay, great. And every other, so please speak up. So there's no harm in speaking up in the class. So if you have any doubts, please speak up and or ask me all the questions. If you do not know, there is completely fine, no problem. I can definitely spend some time on that. Okay. So yeah, so anyways, we'll start discussing on that. So before, why I say this, because queries are nothing but we are having so like we are joining data sources uh, for our own convenience, and we are presenting that data in a view. So that is why we discuss queries and view in a similar. So what are queries? So let us start on this one. So queries, I think I already discussed. So it's like a it contains one or more table as a data source. Okay, and and first thing, the main important thing, it is reusable in forms and reports also. That is the best part of it. And why do we need that? Because there are some cases where we have a like highly complex data structure or database. We might need to add few of our data, or few of fetch some of the record based on some condition. And it might happen that all the data or all the columns might not be in the same table. So in that case, a few of the tables needs to be joined, correct? And whenever I say that we need to join something, then I mean we need to create a query based on our join type. We should add that those tables and get that query written, so that my table 1 is linked to my table 2, and table 2 is again linked to my table 3, and maybe table 3 is linked to my table 4. So it is a structure, right? So table 1, 2, 3, 4 are interrelated. And then when the query is created, then I want to fetch the record, or rather I want to see those records. So how do I see that record? So then I use my views. So right, so then I go ahead, create a view and those views, in that view, I will use that query as a data source, right? So view, if you open the view, you will, it's nothing like nothing but a table. So it's similar to table only. It has fields, it has methods and everything, but in table it's a primitive data structure where you can go ahead and create our own data. But views are nothing but it is used only to show that record. And how, if you want to show that record, we need to have a data source, right? And that is why we are using queries, correct? Okay, before queries, going to queries, so I'm saying to like, if you know the join, so there are a few type of joins. I think we all know. So we have basic inner join. So by default, whenever you are writing a adding the tables in queries, so it is always inner joins by default. Okay, and if you have if you mention else, if you mentioning that okay, this is not an inner join, then you have that option. But by default it takes always inner joins. I'll explain what it is, but this is by default what it takes. Okay, and it's like similarly we have our outer joins, and similarly, I mean, these are left outer join, right outer. Okay. So let us discuss on this. Because let us discuss this part, because this will be helpful when we start our like writing our codes, because these joins and how to add the table, these we use on a day-to-day basis whenever we are writing some logic. So we need to use access table, and base, and whenever we are accessing table, so writing data or fetching data based on the table and everything, that's a day-to-day operation for us. Okay, so that is why we need to write all this, know all these joins. So what do I mean by inner join? So let us assume we have table table 1. Okay, and it is having my supplier record. Okay, vendor record, what we call vendor record, which is a master data, and it is having 100 records which are unique. Okay, so this is important, 100 record which are unique records. Okay, so which is my vendor one. Now I go ahead and I select create a new table where I have my vendor transactions. I have 600 records. Those are also unique based on the transaction ID. Okay, so based on transaction ID, and this is unique based on vendor based on vendor number. So all these 100 record has unique numbers, and all this vendor transaction has unique transaction ID. So which is very self-explanatory, right? Now I have a third record table, which is vendor invoices, and I have 200 records. It is also unique based on invoice number. Invoice number. Okay. Okay. So right now this structure is a simple data. Just to explain, we have this structure 100, 600, and 200 records, and these three tables are storing data, and every line of data in each of the tables is unique based on some parameters. Here it is vendor number, or rather we can say as what is my primary index, right? So it can be my vendor number. In this table, my primary index is transaction ID, and here it is an invoice number. Now when I say inner join, and I am joining vendor record and vendor transaction, so here if I join these two tables, and how, and we are creating these two tables, and if we are fetching those record, and then how it will only bring the record which is common to both the tables. So what do I mean by that? So if there is 100 vendor records, and let's assume under those 100 vendor record, if we have 50 records, or rather 50 vendor number which has transaction in the table, then in those cases, those based on those 50 records, it will show the vendor transaction. Okay, this is the concept of inner join. What is outer join? It's an opposite to that. If I add these two tables, vendor
Can you
record.
repeat, Maitra, inner join concept?
Okay, so take an example. If we have these two tables, vendor record and vendor transaction, and this maybe these 100 records, or all are unique records, and under those 100, maybe we have 50 different vendors. So 50 different vendors has transactions in this 600 record. Okay, so maybe we have here the 600 record is coming from 50 different vendor number. Okay, so 50 different vendor numbers. So whenever I join these two table, correct, and this is, if this is my parent table, so only the records for these 50 different vendor numbers will show me, because I have this join which is there, which is an inner join. So whichever record is common to both these tables, those records will be showing it here. And because I do not have transaction for the other 50 different vendors, those records will not show here. Similarly, if I go ahead and create an outer join, right? It's an outer join. So what happens? By default, all the records show. It doesn't say, okay, I do not have record for 50 numbers, but it doesn't matter. It shows all the records because I have selected the complete bunch of record. So it's a complete set of data I am bringing up. I do not have any filters, right? And why that is not needed for us, or why that is not, sometimes we use outer joins, but why that is not needed for us, because whenever we are doing any queries, we need to see some specific record, and I know that okay, I am adding vendor record to my vendor transaction, so I have this idea that vendor transaction should show only those record where I have vendors, like vendor records which is having my transactions. If some vendors, let's say 50 vendors, they do not have transactions, so why do I need to see that in my query? Correct, so that is not maybe needed. But in some cases, if you want to see those records also, maybe you can use that. So it's an idea. So if some cases, if you want to see all those vendors, 100 vendors, then you can see that. Otherwise, you do not want to see that, and only those inner, when you do an inner join, only those vendor records which are having transaction will come up. Otherwise, it shows all the records, right? Similarly, if we do an vendor invoice and this, so vendor, so if we do an inner join between table 1 and table 3, right? So table 1 and table 3, if we have do an inner join, so only those vendor records which have invoice numbers or unique invoice numbers will appear in my queries. So based on my logic. And similarly, if we have do an outer join, all the vendor records which are present, it will show up. Right? This is the concept. So it's like a so if you know set, right? If you know set theory, so if you go anywhere, they will show you as a like a tool, as a set theory. So if you know those Venn diagrams, so so this is one like a circle, and with another circle, if those circle are intersecting, the intersection point is called inner join. So to put it very simply, right? To take, if you two circles, if those circles are so circles are overlapping, so that overlapping part or whatever part is common to both of them, it's an inner join, to put it simply. And if those circles, if they overlap also, but if you do an outer join, all the elements from both the circles will appear. Okay, so that is an outer join, simple. So the left outer join and right outer join is nothing but I do an outer join where I mean, only those like the left circle, if you consider those two circle, or let's say I do an outer join on 1 and 3. Okay, so if I do a left outer join, so that means this is my first table, and this is my third, say, second table. And if I do a left outer join, so this is the first table we'll consider as a left circle, and all the records for that table will appear, and only the common records from table 2 will appear, not all the records from table 3. Okay, so that is a left outer join. The reverse concept is true for right outer join. If I join 1 and 3, all the records from table 3 will appear, and only the common records from table 1 and 3 will appear from table 1. So this is the concept of right outer join. Okay, if we are clear, so if we, I mean, if we, when we start writing queries, we will more understand. So just consider this thing. So I mean, to know this concept is very important, because queries is fine. I mean, it's a data structure. I am creating the data structure and I'm showing that to you in a format which is and you can see the data in the view. But this is like, knowing this concept is important to write the codes in future, because whenever I ask you to write something, there are few basic things is, I mean, we should know, right? We should be doing on a day-to-day basis. First is, uh, I have a data and I need to bring some data through code. What do I need for that? I need to know some select statement. So what do I'm selecting some data, right? So how do I write a select statement? So that is the first thing we should be knowing, or how to know the write that thing, right? That is the first thing. I mean, I will discuss that later next week, but just to let you know. Then if we have a complex data structure, we should know how to join the record. That is going to help us and filter out those records. Then if we know that, okay, I know how to select the data, I know how to join the data, then I need to see how to do my insert or delete record, which are operation on database, right? Because through code we do this every time. We create data, we delete data, we update data, right? This is also, so these are the basic stuff how we need to do, and based on these things will be I mean, see this write the code based on knowing all these basic concepts. This is the first thing. Okay, so okay, if you're clear on this part, so let me go to that slide and you see. So this is a query, so we have discussed. So we can identify and few of the data tables, and we can add those tables based on condition. Okay. Okay, this is important. So queries are actually used. So, I mean, instead of select statement. So as I said, select statement, right? So if you are having a select statement and joining records on that table, so instead of that, I can create a query also, and that is actually faster way of retrieving the data from the database, because that query can be used or reused everywhere in the system. So my example is, so class in the in my code, if you write a select statement, and in the select you can write so many joins, right? If you are writing like 2 3 different tables and joining based on condition and selecting fields, and that is happening on runtime, correct? Whenever you are running the code, it is creating a database operation through that select statement. It is bringing out all those fields, and this is storing that value, and based on your code it is executing some operation. But if you see that, you know that, okay, I know this. If I create a query, I do not need to write this select or join, but I can create that query. That query will do this part, this select and join part for me, and that can be reused every time. And whenever I have that query, this code just simply needs to uh, parse that query and bring my records, nothing else. But if I write this operation, the code has to go to database, to each of the different table, based on the condition it will have to bring out those columns, correct? So if I know that, I can create a query and I can go and reuse that. That is then we can create a query and view also, and that is helpful for us to write the code. Okay, so that is a reusability concept. Okay, yeah, so here it
Uh,
is also, you can create queries in
Myself,
instead of X++ code if possible, but assuming most of the times queries are used in the views, just to show some data, just for our own understanding. Okay, I am writing some code, why the data is not being correctly visible, or why the data is not showing correctly. So in that case, for our own testing also, whatever we are writing in the code, I just simply go ahead and create a query based out of that, and I just create a view on that query, and then see, okay, this many records are coming. Okay, if this my queries is correct or my code is correct. So that is why I say, I mean, I wanted to show you because this is very, uh, I mean, important for our own understanding also, just how to how we create a query, and why that is important for our own development point of view. Okay, yeah, queries can also be used as a data source in form and report. So if you remember, I said like the menu item for reports and forms, right? So forms, I told you like we have this structure, right? Form for forms, that we have a table or query as a data source. So tables are straightforward. I create a table, I attach to that form as a data source, and then I have my menu item and menu. But similarly, if we do not have a query, if we do not have a table, rather, if we just uh, want to create a complex data structure which is a query, then I can join few of the tables, and that query I can select as a data source in my form. So whenever the form opens, so it runs that query logic, and by default only those filtered records based on the condition which is mentioned in the query will appear in the form. Okay, so that is also another part of showing the record. So, and also reports, report is a, whenever we are running that report or creating a complex report, and then I can go ahead and select a query as a data source. We do not need to go to and go ahead and maybe select a temporary table or something. So I hope you remember that we have three table types, right? Temporary table, regular table, and in-memory table. Whenever I create a regular table, like whenever I create a table, it's a regular table because by default its type is regular. So temporary and in-memory tables are generally used for showing some record on a runtime, and if we do not need those record after running that operation, and in reports also, because reports are only used on runtime. Okay, okay. If you are good with that, then we'll go to the simply we'll see some views. Yeah, views. Okay, just to put it simply, views are is a kind of a virtual table. Okay,
My
and
friend, sorry, I have some clarification needed here. What
mhm.
is the difference between query and statement, select statement? Aren't they both same, or is it MSG specific? There are a different meaning.
Queries. Oh, queries are selected. No, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, yes. So if I write a go ahead and write a select statement, okay. So in that
Okay.
I can, I mean, if I can join maybe five, seven different tables, and based on some conditions, I can go ahead and do that. So that code, if that code you are writing in your own classes or in or your own methods, and you are running that code, whenever the class is running, your code is getting executed. Similarly, you can whatever structure in the select statement, join statement you have written. Similarly, you can do that operation through a query maybe. Okay, because why? Because queries are also for selecting records based on some conditions from different tables. Okay, but the query can be reused in different applications. So that query can be
Okay.
used in my forms or my views or my reports, but that piece of code can only be used in my class and in a operation which is using that class. Okay, so
Okay.
that reusability of queries comes handy whenever I create a query, and I can use that query into my different objects. I can see the, for showing only the record, I can use it into the view, or creating some data, I can also show it into the form and also into the reports also. So that is the best part of the queries. And queries, whenever you go and create a query, so you see that you can join the data sources based on some conditions and everything. So that is helpful. But select statement are, I'd say, useful when you are writing a complex operation in a class, and you know that okay, I can write and know my logic, and I can implement that in the select statement. But to
Mhm.
implement that in a query would be difficult, maybe because maybe three, four different tables you are joining, and there are a complex set of conditions. So maybe table one and two will be joining based on three different conditions, and table two and three similarly will be joined based on four or five different conditions. So that happens. That's a very common scenario because we do not write our logic based on only one condition. There are multiple
Yeah.
conditions. So in those cases, if we are having to create a method or a class or select statement, that comes in. Okay, but for simple operation, one or two joins, that creating the query, and if you can reuse that query, it is always advisable. You can create a query in the in your data structure instead of writing express code. So that is the basic difference.
Just to, for the reusability purpose, like we are using the queries, right?
We are using what?
For the reusable purpose, we will have the queries concept in the MSD here.
Yeah, for getting to fetch the record, to show the record in a filtered way, we can have that reusability concept from through query. But as I said, for select statement, that needs to be written in a class, and that class needs to be attached to some operation. Then only I can run that logic.
Understood. And once you create a query, let's say you created the top 20 of employees in some table. Okay, let's say our customers having more than 10,000. Just so if that
Hmm.
is a query that I've created, suppose if I'm using it in some other object, and if I want to make it only show me only 10, will I be
Hmm.
able to edit that query, or I need to create a new query for that?
In that cases, only 10. Okay, no, in that cases you can edit the query. Definitely you can go ahead and edit the query, and you can I mean edit and create a new query and use that one. So so queries are basically, okay, so put it simply, if I so that query, whenever you are creating that query, you are setting some conditions, correct? So you are saying that I
Yeah.
have based on a condition, I have set top 100 customers, correct? And now
Correct.
in that top 100 customer, whenever you are writing your logic, or you're getting the data from the top 100 customer, your select statement or whatever logic you are writing, it should bring the record from that uh, top 100 customer only. But if you want to see only top 10 customer, then you should be going ahead and changing that query or create a new query, and so that it shows only top 10 customers. Similarly, it goes for your X++ code also, right? The similar changes,
Yeah.
because if write a select statement that only brings 100 records, and if you want to bring 10 records, then your select statement also needs to be changed, correct, based on
Of
some
course.
condition. Similarly,
Yeah.
queries also, so that also needs to be changed.
Yeah, but in that way, actually, reusability are very limited, right? Because the reports are something, it will be very specific to each others. There can be a joins between table, but the select statements may vary uh, between all the reports.
Yeah, I can. Okay, no, not that way in that way. So let me give you a practical example. So we have a few reports in our system called top 100 or top 100 customers or top 100 vendors. Okay, so
Yeah,
there is
yeah,
a by default automatically those reports are into the system. So in that case, I don't remember how they have written the logic. I mean, there's a system there, but I'm assuming if they should have used a if you are using something, if you are creating a simple query, right, which is bringing top 100 customers, so if that query can be used into that report only, right? That is fine. I mean, there's no harm in that. But if Microsoft is going ahead and using that query again into another report, that is, I mean, for their fault. But for report, if there is complex structure, like the complex data structure, and if I do not want to go ahead and write those select statement, I can, it's easier to go ahead and create a query. It's no harm in go ahead and create a query. And the reusability comes when you have, maybe you have a set of big operations, and you know that that select statement can be used, or that query can be used a lot of times. So in that way, I create a query and I use that query, and to bring those records, the database operation takes much lesser time than writing a select statement and writing that query. Because when you are writing a select statement, so how it works is, let's say these are take an example of this one. So if we are going to query, so So let's say if we have this the select statement for these two tables. Okay, so actually for vendor record, vendor transaction, if you go ahead in the system, there are thousands of record. Let's assume this is a customer record. So I think I have given this example also earlier. So we worked for a UK company where it was they were having customer records of maybe in thousands, like in 300 400,000, that is 3-4 lakhs customer, or maybe more than that, and they were having 500,000 invoices, that is 5 lakh invoices per day. So they were a retail customer, correct? So
Yeah.
imagine the number of customer transaction in those records, right? And if you are only so writing is, let's say, select statement. Okay, so what it does, if you are just writing, or say, let's say if I write a select statement of like this, let's say I select my customer table, so which is my cast table, so I just write the cast table. Okay, so select cast table, and then I go ahead and join cast transaction. Okay, so then I join cast trans. Okay, this is a simple join cast trans, and where I just write a condition, right? Where
Hmm.
cast trans dot so this is a field name, like based on which condition. So account number, right? So I just say the account number equals to custable dot account number. So this is a simple select statement. Okay, what it does, so from the database point of view, what it does, so why this select statement, I think this is not at all advisable, because if you go ahead and writing this select customer table, in this actually in the customer table there are 150 different fields. It brings out all the values from those 150 fields. Okay, and
Yeah.
similarly, if you join the customers in the customer transaction also, it brings out the values of all the customer transaction table. Correct?
Yes.
That is
Yes.
not needed. That is actually lengthening the database operation, because we actually might be needing 5 or 8 different fields. Correct? We do
Yeah.
not need 150 different fields, so that is why it's not advisable to write that. So what in that case we have to do, we have to, and after the select we have to mention each and every different field names. Okay, under select, then the field 1 2 3 4 5 from customer table, then you go ahead and join customer transaction, and then again here also you write those 1 2 3 4 5 tables. So you in
Hmm.
atom, so to make it short, so you had 10 different fields, from 5 from customer table and 5 from customer transaction, through this select statement. So if you are not going ahead with this route, then you can create a simple query for customer table and customer transaction, and I select only, and in the view I can go ahead and select only 10 different fields. So which is actually shortening by data purpose of fetching the terms. And maybe if you are not able to understand this 200 or 600, but in practical example, this is actually helpful, because the customers, they can have, like as I said an example, 5 lakh invoices in a day. So those are practical examples, like all the big retail customers. Okay, so we
True.
have the customer of pantaloons, right? So in pantaloons, they all those have retail outlets and everything. They were having close to 100,000 records in a day for all the invoices. So all those, so you can to write a join on those 100,000 record each day. So imagine, so after only 100 days, they are having 1 crore record, right? So it's not easy to use those things. Okay.
Understood.
Yeah. So if you have good with that, so let us start with the views part. So views is fine. I mean, just to show the whenever data I am fetching through a query, I am showing that through view. So it's nothing but a virtual table. It's a table. It's not a, like, it's an object. It's not something like temporary table or something. It's a specific object called view, like our objects, like table, EDT, enum, we have that object. Similarly, view is an object where those contents are defined by my queries. Okay, and like a table, views have also fields and rows to represent record. And what are my those fields and rows? Those fields and rows is nothing but from that query I can bring those fields and the rows. So let's say through my query I have selected 15 or 20 different fields, but in the view actually I need to see maybe three records. So I was giving you the example, right? So for our own testing purpose, we also use our queries and view. So how we use that? So that query, I may need to use 20 different fields, right? So maybe those fields are needed in my operation. Maybe I'm adding some value or doing some operation on those fields. So I have added 20 fields in my query. But in the view for my testing only, I just need to see three fields. So those three fields are having, I mean, whenever I'm writing some piece of code or something, I just need to see those three fields are having correct record or not. So in that case, I use those fields in the view, and it just shows me a like a comprise view, like it has only three fields and it shows only those records. Okay, yeah, it is. Dynamically created, so the data actually, so in the view is not stored I mean stored as a database object, but dynamically created, because this queries can be changed dynamically, because whenever there is a query, I have written some condition, and based on the condition the data is actually stored into the view. Okay. So yeah, so benefits, yeah, focus data we have explained. Also the customized data we have explained, like focus data means, as I explained, so under those 20 different fields I can show only three different fields. Customized data, so in the complex query I can create my complex query and I can show that customized data. And performance, which we have discussed multiple times, it is important for to use, excuse me, for as a good performance, because this view actually is providing better performance, because we are only having to select few of the fields to the query. Do not need to go through the select statement group, which is showing those fields. Okay, so if you have any questions, so please ask me now, and I'll just check the chat now. If I think I saw someone was asking something.